The final boss is back. It's go time. Season 3 is here. Are you tuning in? Every Sunday is Sitting Down Sundays with the final boss. Get ready for an inspiring journey as we dive deep into the transformation from the nation's capital to the entertainment capital of the world. This is the conversation that will ignite your dreams and fuel your ambitions. What you'll experience: game-changing insights from industry leaders, real talk about making impossible dreams possible, the blueprint for leveling up your life, motivation that hits different. This isn't just another podcast episode. This is your wake-up call to greatness. Don't just listen, absorb, don't just hear. Transform, don't just dream, execute. Drop a like in the comments if you're ready to level up with us.
Welcome to Sunday night edition of Sitting Down Sundays with the one, the only, the final boss. Yes. Hey, good people, good to be here. Hey, listen up. Babu, thank you for joining us. Merman, thank you for joining us. Hey, listen, man, I got a great show for you tonight. Look, yesterday was, I'll wait for some more people to come on board before I get into the schematics and the details of everything. Nothing like some good ginger ale, right? But look, let me get situated. Yes, man, listen. This is episode number 206. Slow Wi-Fi. I bet everybody's talking about how things are looking kind of slowish here of late. Accounts, social media, you name it, man. People are moving in slow motion, right? People are moving in slow motion. But look, I got a great show for you guys tonight, man. And yesterday was my born day, right? Yesterday was my born day. So happy born day to me. And I was thinking, I was like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna do a show today. I'm still kind of in a celebratory mode. Thank you to the beautiful, always analytical, and never compromising on her beliefs or what she understands as truth. Give a shout out to the wonderful Andrea. Yeah. Yes, man. She is a powerhouse of information, and she will stand by it analytically. And if you're not careful, yeah, flag on the play. If you're not careful, she will study you and throw your old stuff back at you. Boom, flag on the play, right? I just gave you a shout out, and I'm gonna give you a flag on the play to the wonderful, never compromising Andrea. Yes, flag on the play. Yeah, you know it. So look, man, this is episode number 206. So back to my birthday, man. So I had a great birthday celebration. This year was kind of intimate, right? It wasn't like last year, man. Last year was a full-blown surprise birthday party, man. But this year was very intimate and private, right? And more, and it was equally as enjoyable. Thank you so much. You know who you are, man. It's hot. Look, I got the doors open, I got the windows open. I'm like, man, it is 80 something degrees. What's going? And then how the DC DMV March weather? It would snow tomorrow. 8 feet tomorrow of snow, right? That's what happens around these parts. But look, since we're in season 4, man, we are in season 4, man. Season 4 is getting ramped up, and starting tomorrow for Motivation Mondays, I'm going to start doing a countdown because season 5 will be here before you know it. And we're going to start doing a countdown to season 5. Season 5 is the harvest in the shed. So season 5 is going to be something remarkable, right? Something remarkable, man. And so we're going to start doing the motivation on Motivation Monday starting tomorrow. Every episode, we're going to start doing a countdown to season 5, even though we're still early into season 4, man. But look, we're moving forward anyway. Let me get rid of these banners, right? You know who I am. Boom. Banners gone. All right. So listen. Episode number 206, right? The rebirth, right? Think about this, man. Think about this. When people say the rebirth, right? And then you hear season 4, the rebirth. The rebirth reaches its inflection point tonight, right? At episode number 206. This episode doesn't look forward. It looks back and reframes everything the audience survived as intentional, right? As intentional. Got it. Yes. Intentional construction, right? The breakdown was the blueprint. The silence was a strategy. The confusion was concrete being poured, right? And tonight we sit in that truth and let it settle, man. We're going to let it settle as we get into it. And here's the brass tacks tonight. And your brass tacks is coming from none other than the final boss, right? None other than the final boss, right? And here it is. You didn't fall apart. Yeah, you didn't fall apart. You were taken apart. Here's the difference. One is accident. The other is architecture, right? And that is our brass tacks for tonight, man. Now let's get into it, man. Let's get into it. So wherever you are, I need you to sit with something real quick, right? I need you to sit with something before we even get into tonight's episode, right? So just stay with me for a second, right? Don't reach for your phone, right? Don't scroll. Just be here. Be here in this moment, right here, right? And I want you to think about the hardest season of your life, not the inconvenient season, not the uncomfortable season, the hardest one, right? The one that broke your routine, broke your confidence, and broke some relationships. Look, maybe it broke your sense of who you were, right? And left you in a state of confusion. The season where you woke up some mornings and genuinely did not recognize the life you were living, right? The life you were living. The one where the plan stopped working and the backup plan stopped working. You were just sitting in the middle of it, trying to figure out what your next move even was, right? Hey, Chakandi, thank you for joining us, right? Hey, Fran, thank you for joining us, right? You didn't know, right? You didn't know. But I want you to hold on to that season, right? Hold on to it in memory, right? Hold it in your mind right now, right? And I want you to not relive the pain of it, not to go back into it emotionally, right? But to look at it from where you're standing tonight with a different lens, right? Because there is something about the season that you may have never given yourself permission to see clearly, right? You called it being lost. You called it failing. You called it falling behind. You called it and some of you do this, right? And you shouldn't, but some of you do, right? Some of you call it God not showing up, right? But God's always showing up. It's always a lesson, whether it's good or bad. Whatever you're going through, it's God's lesson in his divine plan, right? Some of you say the universe is not cooperating or your luck has run out, right? You built a story around that season. And in that story, you were the victim of circumstances that were working against you, right? But I'm here to tell you, right? What if that story was wrong? Right? Not partially wrong, fundamentally wrong. Right? What if everything that fell apart in that season was falling apart on purpose? What if the confusion was not chaos, but curriculum for you to learn, right? Like you're learning right now. Take some notes, right? Take some notes. What if the losses were not punishments, but preparations, right? What if you were not being destroyed, but being dismantled deliberately so that something stronger, something more aligned, something more architecturally sound could be built in its place? Right? And this right here, this is the question that this entire episode is going to dwell in, right? And before this episode is over, I'm going to give you a framework that changes how you see every hard season you've ever lived through, right? And every hard season that is still ahead of you, right? Because one thing is for sure, two things are certain. You're either in a storm, right? In a storm, going into the storm, or you're coming out of that storm, right? And look, this is not Motivation Monday, and this isn't motivation, right? This is surgical, right? This is surgical, and we're going to dive deep into what the rebirth of this season really means, right? So, for all of those who are just joining us, welcome to the one and only, the Final Boss podcast, sitting down Sundays with your host, the Final Boss, right? And I hope you guys are locked in. I hope you're ready to take some notes, man, because the rebirth episode 206, this is the one, right? And I want to say something before anything else tonight, right? If you are here, if you found this show, if someone sent you this particular episode, if the algorithm dropped this in your feed, if you have been riding with us since day one, like most of you have, or you just discovered the room tonight, I bet you $1,000, right? $1,000. None of that is random, right? We don't do coincidences over here. You are here because something in you recognized that this conversation was for you, right? That this is not a marketing line that I'm speaking of. This is how it works, right? This show does not find casual people. The Final Boss podcast attracts individuals who are in the same stage of construction. You are either in the middle of building something, in the middle of rebuilding something, or you in the middle of sitting in the wreckage that you have built, or something just came down and you're trying to figure out what your next move is going to be, right? That is this room, right? That has always been this room. So let me acknowledge who is in here tonight before we do anything else, right? I gotta give a special shout out to my final bosses, right? The ones who've committed to the long game, the ones who are not chasing shortcuts, the ones who understand that becoming the final version of yourself is the work of a lifetime, right? And they have accepted the assignment. I see you. We all see you. You are exactly where you need to be. Thank you for joining us, right? Always to my final bosses, right? And to my smarts, the thinkers, right? The analyticals, right? The strategists, the ones who do not move until they understand the full picture. The ones who have been told they overthink things when in reality, they're just operating on a different level of clarity than most people. Right? Tonight is going to feed your mind in a way that converts it into action, right? And to my motivators, right? To my motivators, The ones who carry the room, right? I see you, right? The ones who pour into other people even when their cup is running low. The ones who show up for you and show up for everybody else and sometimes forget to show up for themselves, right? Tonight, I'm showing up for you. This one is specifically designed to refuel the people who fuel everyone else, right? Everyone else. And to my warriors, the ones in the fight right now, right? The ones who are not winning every round, but they haven't left the ring, right? The ones who have taken hits that would have finished most people, and they are still standing, right? Still standing, still swinging, still showing up, right? This episode is your testimony before you even finish living it, right? This is the rebirth, people. Let's build, right? So before I get into tonight's topic, I need to do something, right? And this is something I don't always do. I always have these disclaimers, man. I love disclaimers, right? I need to establish the context for the season at a level we haven't articulated yet, right? Because some of you are new to the room and you need to understand what you are walking into, right? And some of you who've been here since season 1, and you need to hear this framed in a way that shows you how far we have actually come, right? Because season 1 was about foundation, building an identity, establishing the principles, understanding who the final boss is and what they are made of, right? That was the introduction season. We were planting flags. And speaking of flags, right? Flag on the play. Flag on the play. For no particular reason. No particular reason. We just throw flags on the play, right? And season 2 was about development. Taking the identity and putting it into action. Building the systems, testing the frameworks, finding out which tools work and which ones need to be sharpened, right? That was the construction season. And then season 3, right? Season 3 was the reckoning, right? That was the audit. And I would not sugarcoat what season 3 was because it would disrespect everyone who sat through it honestly, right? Season 3 required us to hold the mirror up and look at what wasn't working. Not what we wanted to be true, what was actually true, right? We looked at failed habits. We looked at relationships that ended or needed to end, right? We looked at goals we had been carrying out of pride and not out of purpose. We looked at the gap between who we said we were and who we were actually being, right? That was hard. That was the most uncomfortable season to date this show has ever produced. And it was necessary, right? It was definitely necessary. And season 4, the rebirth. Rebirth is not a reward for surviving a reckoning. It is the result of it, right? You do not get a rebirth without going through reckoning first, right? The season exists because season 3 did its job. The reckoning cleared the ground. The rebirth is what gets built in on that cleared, tilled ground, right? And tonight's episode, we sit at the center of that transition. The space between who you were and who you're becoming, right? That in-between space is the most dangerous space most people will ever occupy because it looks like nothing is happening when in reality, everything is happening. That is what we're unpacking, right? And we spoke about this. We spoke about being in the void, right? We spoke about being in the void a few episodes ago, right? We talked about it on the episode becoming everything and nothing all at once, right? Now, let me give you the first truth of tonight. I need you to receive this without immediately defending the story you have been telling yourself, right? Because the word lost, as it applies to seasons of confusion and disorientation and your personal development, right? It's a lie. It's a lie, not a misunderstanding, not a imprecise word choice, right? A lie. And I need to explain exactly why, right? Because when you call yourself lost, you're making a specific claim, right? You are claiming that you have no direction, right? That your movement is random, that there is no underlying intelligence to the path you are on. I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but I I have a compass, right? Right? This compass. So I always know what direction I'm going in, right? Your movement is random, right? That there's no underlying intelligence to the path you're on. Lost means wandering without purpose. Lost means no one is navigating. Lost means the compass is broken and there is no particular map, right? But look at what was actually happening during the seasons you have labeled as being lost, right? You were becoming more selective about who had access to you. You were getting uncomfortable in environments that used to feel normal, which means your standard was rising, even if your output had not caught up, right? Output didn't catch up yet. You were asking bigger questions and purpose and meaning. And you was looking for the direction of your current life that you couldn't answer, right? Which means you were outgrowing the current, right? Not failing inside it. You were your sleep was off, right? A lot of us raise your hand. Sleep's been off, man. Sleep's crazy right now, right? Your thinking is different. You see the world with a different lens, right? Which means your OS is being updated, right? So that isn't lost. That is a system going through significant upgrade. Your OS is being upgraded. You are being upgraded. Yeah, you. Sit down. No bathroom break. No hallway pass. Sit down. Sit down. Listen. I'm about to learn you something. Right? Your OS is being upgraded. And the reason it feels like lost is because during the upgrade, the old version of the program is not fully functional, but the new version is not fully installed, right? And I've talked about this as well, right? You're in between versions that feels like malfunction. It's not malfunction, it's transition. And to my smart center room, who already know this intuitively, right? You cannot be in the middle of becoming and simultaneously be operating at full capacity at the thing you are becoming, right? You know, I love the reference of the caterpillar. Caterpillar is not a broken butterfly. It is a butterfly in process, right? Stop calling the process failure. Call it what it actually is. Call it construction, right? Call it construction. That's what you need to call it. And to my smarts, to my motivators, to my warriors, right? To my final bosses. Listen, the second truth of tonight builds directly on the first and is the one that changes how you see every loss you have ever had or every loss you have ever experienced. Because demolition and destruction are not the same thing, and confusing them has cost more people more peace than almost any other mental error that they've ever seen, right? And I'll break it down for you. Let's talk about destruction. Destruction means something ruined beyond use, right? Destruction means the material is gone, right? Destruction means that what was there is no longer recoverable, right? Think about a building that burns down. The structure is gone. The material is compromised. You are starting from zero because destruction took everything. Welcome to ground zero, right? But demolition is different. Demolition is a professional operation. Demolition requires planning. Demolition requires permits. Demolition requires an architect, right? Someone who already knows what is going up in that space that is being cleared, right? When a demolition crew shows up to a building, they are not there because the building failed. They are there because something better has been designed to take that place in that same location, right? In that same existing structure that has to come down to make room for the new, right? Now, apply that to your life. Think about it. Apply that to your life. That relationship that ended, was it destruction or demolition? That career path that collapsed, was it destruction or demolition? The version of yourself that stopped working, was it destruction or demolition, right? The financial season that forced you to rebuild from a lower position, was that destruction or demolition, right? I'm telling you, man, I'm telling you that most of what you have labeled as destruction in your life was actually demolition. The difference is not in the event. The difference is whether or not there was a plan behind the removal, right? And here's the part that requires faith to accept. You may not have had access to the plan, right? You don't know what God's plan is. None of us do, right? But the absence of your access to the blueprint does not mean the blueprint does not exist, right? To someone walking past a demolition site with no knowledge of what is being built, it looks like chaos. It looks like loss. It looks like something went already wrong, right? But the architect knows exactly what's happening, right? The builders know exactly what's happening, right? Every beam, every foundation, all of it accounted for, right? It's all part of the plan. The question is not whether the plan exists. The question is whether you trust the architect enough to stand in the rubble while or without assuming it is permanent. You have to trust the process, right? And I want to address a specific kind of season tonight, right? Because I know there are warriors in this room who have lived through this and have never had language for it. And I'm talking about the quiet seasons, right? The seasons where the momentum stopped, the seasons where the opportunities dried up, the seasons where the phone got quiet, the room got empty, and you were sitting with yourself in a stillness that felt less like peace and more like punishment. I need to tell you something about that silence, that it was not empty. It had a job, right? Everything has a job. Like darkness has a job. Nighttime has a job, right? Think about how a computer works, right? I like using computers as a reference, right? When you're running multiple applications, processing data, or executing commands, the system is in active use. But there is a version of a computer operation that requires you to close everything down, shut down every program, right? Stop all processes. And you let that machine run a diagnostic, right? It checks systems, it identifies errors, it repairs files, right? It sees things that have corrupted, and then it fixes them through the diagnostics, right? But that diagnostic cannot run while everything else is running. It requires the silence of work. Your quiet seasons were your diagnostic that's running in the background. And what was being repaired during that silence was this. It was your beliefs that were corrupted by repeated failure. It was the self-concept that had been damaged by other people's projections. Right? It was the vision that had been blurred by too many distractions and doom scrolling. Right? The values that had been compromised by pressure. The purpose that had been buried under performance. All of that runs on the diagnostic. And when the noise stops and it gets quiet and silent, and the world gets quiet around you, most people respond to the quiet seasons by manufacturing noise. They don't understand that they're supposed to be in the quiet, right? They chase activity not because the activity is productive, but because the silence is uncomfortable, right? They would rather be busy and broken than still and being healed, right? That is one of the most expensive habits a developing person can have. And to my motivators in the room, especially those who need to hear this, right? Because you are the ones most likely to run from the quiet seasons. You are so wired to be in motion, to be producing, to be impactful, that when the season requires stillness, you interrupt it as regression. It's not regression. It is restoration, right? It's restoration. The silence had a job. You have to let the silence finish its job, right? Now, this segment right here, man, it requires a level of maturity to receive, right? It requires a certain level of maturity, right? Because you have to be in a place to receive what I'm going to ask everyone that's in here right now, right? And I want you to step into a space of maturity mentally, right? Before I say what I'm about to say, right? Because you, yes, you, you're not in the right headspace. This truth will read as code, right? Because it's not code, right? But if you see it as being code, you're not in the right headspace. Right? It is one of the most compassionate things I can say to you tonight on this episode, right? So here it is. Listen, some of the people who left your life during your hardest seasons were supposed to leave. They were supposed to leave. Right? I'm gonna say that again, right? But I'm gonna say it with more precision, right? Some of the departures you grieved the most were not accidents. They were not betrayals. They were not failures of connection. They were architectural removals. The structure that was being built in your life could not carry that weight and still become what it was designed to be. Now, I need to be careful here, right? Because I'm not talking about every relationship that ended. I'm not giving you your blanket permission to reframe every person who left as someone who was supposed to go, right? Because listen, some departures were failures, right? Some were failures of communication, failures of commitment, right? etc. You got to own those. You have to take accountability for that, right? But what I want you to do is not spiritualize your accountability, right? Because there is a specific category of departure. The ones that happen right in the middle of your growth. The ones where you were becoming your intentional and the other person could not match the frequency, right? I talk about that, right? Talk about it in Go Time, all aboard the Fired Up train. Talk about the wrong frequencies, right? The ones where the standards were rising and the relationship was anchored to a version of you that no longer existed. Right? The ones where being around that person kept pulling you back into old patterns, old thinking, old versions of yourself, and the new chapter had no room for it. Right? Those departures were not abandonment. They were clearance. Right? Space was being made. Right? People are assigned to you in seasons of your life, right? Some have a purpose in that season, right? And sometimes when the season changes, their assignment changes, right? Not every person who walks out of your life is a loss. Some of them is a promotion, right? They serve their season with honor. Let them go. Kiss them goodbye. Right? With no bitterness. And you keep building. You keep building. Right? Listen. I need to bring this back to the brass tacks, right? Because everything I've covered in the first part of tonight's episode, lost is a lie, right? The demolition is not destruction. The silence had a job. The people who left were part of the plan. All of it, right? Live inside of one master principle. And if you miss this principle, you can take all four truths I just gave you and still not get the transformation this episode is designed to produce, right? And here's the principle. Here is that one principle, right? Perspective, right? Perspective is not just how you see things. Perspective determines what things mean, right? And what things mean determines everything that comes after it, right? Now, let me show you how this works in real time, right? Take two people, right? We're talking about the same event, right? Same event. You take two people. Two people lose their job unexpectedly, right? Right? Person B loses their job unexpectedly, right? And there's an identical circumstance, right? And then there's a split. Because person A decides the job loss means they are a failure, right? It means the market does not value them. It means they made wrong choices. It means they are blind or they're behind, right? The meaning creates shame. That shame creates paralysis. That paralysis creates inaction. That inaction confirms the story. 6 months later, person A is still in the same place, holding a narrative that is destroying their forward motion. Now, you take person B, right? Person B decides the job loss means that what they were doing was too small, right? It means that something is being repositioned. It means that the next chapter required a forced transition. That meaning creates curiosity. The curiosity creates exploration, right? The exploration creates a new direction. 6 months later, person B is building something they would have never built if they had that job and stayed, right? Same event, job loss. Radically different outcomes, right? The only variable that produced those different outcomes was the meaning each person assigned to the event, right? That is the power of perspective, right? You do not get to control everything that happens to you, right? You can't control it, right? You get to control what it means, how you act, right? And what you decide, right? What you decide, it means will determine everything about what you build next. And the rebirth is a perspective shift. That is what season 4 is about at its core. It's a collective decision by everyone in the chat, right? To look back at the demolition and see the architecture, right? Look and listen. I'm going to get a little personal, right? And this isn't being done for vulnerability performance, right? I don't need to make you feel closer to me, right? I do it because there are principles that need to be grounded in real life experience, right? So I'm going to show you what tonight's framework looks like inside an actual life. Mine, right? Right. So you guys are aware, I spent 23 years in the federal service working for DOD, right? Let that number hit it right here, right? 23 years, right? 23 years. That's a long time, right? I was shaped by it. I was disciplined by it, defined by it. The structure, the rank, the mission, the uniform, all of it, right? Became more than just a career. It became identity, right? When people asked who I was, the answer was wrapped in what I did inside that institution. And when that chapter closed, when I made the decision to step away from being a branch chief, right? There was a moment. There was a moment. And I'll be honest with you. This moment was real, right? Where I sat in the quiet of the transition and felt something that I can only describe as identity vertigo. Yeah, identity vertigo, right? The place I had operated inside of for over 2 decades was no longer there. The question that sat in that empty space of who am I when the institution is removed? The question used to feel like loss in the beginning, right? Standing here tonight on the other side of that transition, I can tell you exactly what that moment was. That was demolition. The institution had become a place that was too small for the scope of what needed to be built. You cannot build a publishing empire, a cybersecurity firm, doctoral level of work. Pat myself on the back for that. Right? Podcast that reaches hundreds of thousands, a brand that carries generational weight. You cannot build all of that while operating inside of a place designed for a single institutional role. That place had to come down, right? And listen, I wasn't lost when that chapter closed. I was being repositioned, and it happened almost immediately, right? And now I'm standing at the edge of what I'm building, right? Go Time series is the Go Time All Aboard the Fired Up Train, the first of its series of 3. It's an Amazon bestseller, right? Season 4 is in full motion, right? The firm is established. My daughter and my family are watching me build something that would outlast me, right? Now I can see the blueprint that was always there. Every hard moment was load bearing. Every demolition made room for exactly where I am. Now, enough about me, right? And you see the example. I had to use an example, right? Now, I'm turning this on you, right? I'm turning this on you. The chat, right? Every final boss, every smart, every motivator, every warrior that's in here right now, right? Because this show isn't about me. This show is about you. That was just an illustration that I need to give as an example. Your story is the main point. Your story is the main idea, right? And I want you to do something right now, and I need you to actually do it and not listen to me describe doing. I want you to identify the season of your life that you have been incurring the most shame or confusion around. I want you to identify the one you explain away in conversations, the one you tell people about with disclaimers and apologies, the one that when it comes up, you find yourself minimizing or rushing past that season. I want you to sit with that for a moment, right? Sit with it for a moment. Sit with it, right? Now, I want you to apply it to what we have built tonight, right? What that season actually, that actual season of loss, was it an actual season of loss? Ask yourself that. Or was it a demolition of something that was too small for where you were going? Right? Were the people who left during that season a betrayal, or were there a reassignment? Right? People whose contract with your story was complete. Was the silence of the season emptiness, or was it your system running a diagnostic that the noise was preventing? Right? The noise was preventing. And listen, I'm not asking you to pretend the pain that that season was not real. Right? The pain was real. Right? I'm not asking you to minimize what you lost. Some of those losses were significant. What I'm asking you to do is hold the pain in one hand and the possibilities in the other simultaneously. Simultaneously. Because both can be true. It can hurt and it can be purposeful at the same time, right? Those two things are not in conflict. And here is what I need the motivators in the room to specifically hear. Right? You pour so much into other people's reframes. You are the ones who show up for everyone else's hard seasons when perspective and encouragement and presence are needed. But tonight, I need you to do this for yourself. Pour back into you, right? Apply the same grace you give freely to everyone else to the season of your own life that you have been the hardest on yourself about, right? Because you, yes, you, my friend, you deserve the same pouring that you give everyone else, right? Now, let me give you something that you can carry out of here tonight that's practical and specific, right? Because sitting out Sundays is not just a feeling, it is instruction. And an instruction without application is just inspiration that expires, right? So here's the rebirth protocol. It's 5 steps. 5 steps to cooperating with your own construction instead of fighting it, right? Instead of fighting it. So, mm, step one. Step one. Stop fighting the quiet. You. Stop fighting it. Stop fighting the quiet. When life slows down and the noise drops, the instinct is to manufacture motion, right? Resist that instinct with everything you have. Because the stillness during a construction season is not laziness. It is not regression. It is required. You cannot hear the blueprint being drawn while you are running at full noise, right? When things go quiet, you get quieter. Let the diagnostic run all the way. That's step one. And here's step two, right? I always talk about this, man. I always talk about this. One of my favorite words. Audit. Man, audit, right? Audit. Audit every story you are currently telling yourself about that hard season. Every narrative you carry about your past, right? Audit it for whose voice is in it. Because some of those stories were written by people who do not have access to your blueprint, right? They looked at your demolition and handed you a story about failure because that is all it can see, right? You take those stories back, right? You rewrite them, right? You rewrite them because you're the architect and you could change the perspective, right? And then step three, right? Identify what was built during every season you have been calling a loss, right? Not that what not what you lost exactly, what was built. The discipline that came from the hard season, the discernment that came from the betrayal, the resilience that came from the rejection, the clarity that came from failure, right? That list is your evidence. That is your evidence that construction was happening the entire time, right? And step four, trust the process. Trust the blueprint, right? Even when you can't see it, right? This one requires faith. And I'm using that word intentionally and broadly, right? Whether your faith is spiritual, philosophical, or simply a trained confidence in the intelligence of your own growth process, right? You have to develop the capacity to operate in construction seasons without demanding to see the final structure. The building that does not pause because the person standing in the frame cannot see the finished design, right? And then step five. Step five, right? Protect the construction zone, right? You got to put tape around it, put security guards up, protect the construction zone, right? During your rebuilding seasons, not everyone needs access to the construction site. Construction zones have fences for a reason. Limit who you follow or allow to speak into your process during the season of active rebuilding. The wrong voice at the wrong moment can introduce doubt into a process that requires absolute commitment to move forward. You must guard the construction site, right? Listen, episode number 206. 94 episodes from season 5. The harvest, the shed, right? And I want to do something, right? I want to do something. I want to make the case for why the rebirth is not just a season theme. You're going to hear it trending here. You're going to hear it, right? You're going to hear and see that it becomes a trending word. And I think I might have been the first to start talking about rebirth. I've been talking about rebirth since last season in the reckoning, right? It's just the logical next move. It's the logical next move, man. And if you took the reckoning seriously, you will understand why we are in the rebirth, right? Think about the reckoning. The reckoning demanded a lot. It demanded honesty. It demanded that you look at what was working without the protection of denial or distraction. It demands that you audit your habits, your relationships, your goals, your identity claims, right? And that, my friends, is truthful, right? That's truthful. And the gap between who you are presenting yourself to be and who you're actually being, season 3 made that a demand, right? For everyone in this community, right? And the people who are still in this community, the ones who are tuned in every single night that we're here, they're the ones who answered that demand honestly, right? You looked at the mirror during season 3 and you held that mirror up and you didn't look away. That is not a small thing. Most people who confronted with the gap between who they claim to be and who they actually are, they're going to always choose comfort, right? Comfort of delusion over the discomfort of truth, right? They close the mirror, they switch the channel, they find a community that will confirm their current story instead of challenging it, right? But you that's on the other side of this right here, you didn't do that. You didn't do it. And because you did not do it, because you sat in the discomfort of the reckoning, right? You earned access to rebirth, not as a gift, right? But as a result, a cause and effect, if you will, right? You put in the work of the audit, and the rebirth is the return on that investment, right? Season 4 is not aspirational. It is architectural. We're building, right? We're becoming. Everything is this season is all about the build, right? Every episode, every framework, every truth we through together, it is all load-bearing structure going up and the ground that the reckoning cleared, right? You're not watching a comeback story from the outside, you're living one from the inside. Welcome to the rebirth. You earned it, right? Now, I never close sitting down Sundays without leaving you with a challenge, right? Without leaving you with a challenge. Something specific, something executable, something that converts tonight's conversation into Monday morning action, right? Because inspiration that does not produce behavior change is just entertainment, right? And this show is not entertainment. This is a development program, right? Tonight's challenge has 3 parts, and I want you to do all 3 before you go to sleep tonight, right? Not tomorrow, tonight, right? I want you to do it while the episode is still fresh in your head, right? And here it is. Here it is. Part 1. Write down the 3 hardest seasons of your life. Not the inconvenient ones, the genuinely hard ones, right? The seasons where you genuinely questioned whether things were going to be okay. Write them down with as much specificity as you can. Specificity, right? Name the season. Name the pain of it. Put it on paper, right? Part 2, I want you next to each hard season, write down what was built during that time that you were still carrying around today, right? The discipline, the discernment, the clarity, the skill, the relationship that survived and became iron, right? The version of yourself that emerged on the other side that could not have been produced any other way, right? Write it all down. This is your evidence list, right? And then part 3. Look at everything. Look at everything you just wrote. And write one sentence at the bottom of the page. One sentence that reframes your hardest seasons using tonight's framework. Something like, I was not being destroyed. I was being designed. Or every wall that came down made room for what is going up now, right? Write it in your own words, in your own voice. Make it yours and claim it, right? That exercise is your receipt. That is the document that proves the construction was happening the entire time you thought you were falling apart. Keep the receipts. Pull it out every time the old narrative tries to reassert itself. Pull it out every time doubt shows up and tells you that hard seasons were proof that you were not enough, right? Show doubt the receipt. The construction was real. The evidence is right there on the page, right? And listen, before I bring this home, right, I need to take a full moment for the room, for the chat, right? Listen, this is not a transition, right? We're going over a little bit. We're almost done, right? This isn't a bridge, right, to the sign off. I think it's important to name what's happening in this community right now at this point, right? 206 episodes. Let the number land, let it hit. That is not content volume stat. That is a commitment record, right? It represents over, we're talking years of showing up every single week without fail, right? Years of sitting down on Sundays with a community of people who decided that their development was worth an hour a week. Years into this of refusing to make the show convenient when the truth required it to be uncomfortable. 206 episodes of that commitment. And what has been built because of that commitment, right? A community. And we're talking about a real one, right? Not a following, not a subscriber count, a community of people who have been changed by this process and who are changing other people because of it, right? I get the messages and I read each and every last single one of them, right? The person who heard episode 190 on the desire paradox and used it to pull themselves out of the deepest mental hole of their life. The entrepreneur who heard season 2 while building their business and it became the framework they operate on, right? The veteran who felt seen for the first time in years sitting with one of our warrior specific episodes, right? These, my friends, are not metrics. These are lives. And these lives are real, right? This community, this room, this chat, right? Every final boss, every smart, every motivator, every warrior. You, my friends, you are not passive consumers of content. You are active participants in a movement, right? A movement that says average is a choice and we're choosing something different. A movement that says that the hard road is the real road, right? And we're going to walk it together. A movement that says rebirth is possible for anyone who is willing to cooperate with the construction, right? I am honored to be the host of this room, of this community, of this family, of this nation, right? I did not take that lightly. Not one single episode, not one Sunday night. This is the whole point, right? Now, Sitting Down Sundays, episode 206, season 4 of Rebirth. We weren't we went the full distance, I could say, in this conversation, right? We went all the way through the truths, the protocols, the personal testimony, the community mirror, right? We had challenges. We had a 3-part challenge. We had a real conversation about what this room actually represents, right? That's 60 minutes of hard work, man. And every person who stayed for that full time, I respect you and I'm grateful, right? This is the Final Boss. And this is how the Final Boss podcast moves. But before I let you go, I want to leave you with the full weight of tonight's title one more time, right? Because titles on this show are not marketing cap, right? They are verdicts, and tonight's verdict is final. You were not lost. You were being rebuilt. I'm going to say that again. You were not lost. You were being rebuilt. Right? Say it out loud if you're somewhere where you can, right? Go scream it to yourself in the mirror. Say it to yourself if you are not, right? Let it replace every shame-based story you have been carrying about your hardest seasons, right? Let it displace every narrative that said the confusion meant you were failing, that the silence meant you were forgotten, that the losses meant you were not enough, right? None of that was true, right? But what has always been true is that the architect, God, knew what he was doing, right? Every wall that came down was planned. Every season of the quiet was purposeful. Every departure made room for what was designed to fill that space. You were under construction, my friends. You were under construction, right? You weren't under attack. There's a difference, right? And knowing that difference changes everything. It changed everything about who you walk into this week, right? You carry that into your Monday morning. You carry that into every moment of this week where the old stories try to come back. You carry it into your decisions. You carry it into your relationships. You carry it into your opportunities. You carry it to the challenges. And you understand that you are not a person who got lost and found their way back. You are a person who's always being built. And what is being built is not finished yet, right? The best work is still being done. I am the Final Boss. And this is the Final Boss podcast. To my Final Boss community, my smarts, warriors, motivators, and Final Bosses. This is season 4 of the Rebirth, right? We're in full effect, man. Episode 207 is loading. Be here tomorrow at 9 p.m. for Motivation Monday, right? And to my Final Bosses, to my smarts, to my motivators, to my warriors, I will see you again the next day at 9 p.m. Go and be great. And if this show resonates with you, don't gatekeep. Share it out with at least 3 friends, right? And if it does resonate with you, let it marinate in your spine. And remember this, there's a heavy pain that comes with discipline, but the pain of regret is even heavier. I am here. We are here. And as always, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. That is our show. Be balanced, be equal, be smart people. Thank you for tuning in. You guys have a blessed night. And I'll see you again tomorrow night, 9 p.m. for Motivation Monday. Talk to you soon.